What is going on, everybody? Another Baldur's Gate 3 video for you today. Today I'm going to be talking about my favourite multi-class in the game. It's the one that I play on my main character. It's the one I've been playing. I've been enjoying it a lot. Basically, lets you do everything. You can be the party's face. You can be a powerful melee combatant. You can use the best cantrip in the game. Multi-purpose space. You get all spells. You get all the weapon and armor proficiencies in the game. Mr. Do-It-All. It's the main character build is what I like to call it, because you can kind of do everything. For context, I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons, actual Dungeons & Dragons, not Baldur's Gate 3, for probably about 4 or 5 years. I run multiple campaigns myself, I play multiple campaigns. So I've been building characters in the sort of D&D 5e system for a long time. And this is a build that is pretty common in actual D&D as well. Mostly known to be the sort of blaster caster, the ultimate blaster caster kind of thing. With this one is slightly varied. I'll explain a little bit more later on, but what this is going to be is a triple multi-class build, part fighter, part warlock, part sorcerer. There's a little flexibility in what you can pick, and it really comes online at total level 8, character level 8, so you might want to consider running something slightly different up until level 8. And then respecking then, because it's so cheap to respec in this game anyway. It doesn't really, it doesn't really matter. What you could do instead of going for this one is go to Warlock 3 and then get the rest of the levels in Sorcerer, and you'll until you get to level 8, and then respec and do what I'm about to tell you. So let's get into it a little bit. So for the race, any is a good option, to be honest. The races in this game don't really affect the build too much like they do in D&D 5th edition. There's no sort of attribute bonuses that you get from being a particular race. Personally, if you want to go for the most effective, the most useful thing, I would say Tieflings and Dragonborns are probably one of the best ones, because you get the same movement as the other like full-size classes, and you can get resistances from it. Tieflings obviously get fire resistances, and depending on what type of tiefling you are, you can get different kind of casting abilities, get different spells as well. And for Dragonborn, you can kind of pick a resistance, though you do get less from Dragonborns personally, because the breath weapon is a little bit sort of meh, especially compared to late level spells. You'll basically never be using it. So for me, Tieflings are a little bit better than Dragonborns, but Dragonborns are fucking sick, so, you might want to play Dragonborn just because they're so cool. But yeah, you can kind of pick whatever you like, to be honest. They're just my recommendations from if you want to be the most powerful you can possibly be. Background is important though, because here is where we can make a choice to maximize our skill proficiencies. Because you get skill proficiencies from your background. And we're going to be picking up some other skill proficiencies along the way, so it's important to pick ones here that aren't necessarily going to come up again, so we're not going to be doubling up on any, because you won't get anything for that. You'll just sort of waste an opportunity to pick up another skill proficiency. So here we're going to be picking up Urchin, because you get the very valuable sleight of hand proficiency, which really doesn't actually come up very often. What I found is, sure, you can have a Astarion in your party and he can basically lockpick everything anyway, but if you don't want to have a Astarion in your party, kind of screwed. You don't, unless you are good at lockpicking and all those dexterity skills like stealth, you're not really gonna get anybody else that's very good at it, so may as well be you, right? So pick up the sleight of hand proficiency. You also get stealth proficiency with this, like I was saying, so that's also really useful. It's another proficiency that you're not really going to get to come up, not really going to get the opportunity to get very often, so very useful. Okay guys, so I've gone in game here so you can kind of see what's going on. First off, we are going fighter at level 1. So what this is going to get us is basically all the armor and weapon proficiencies, which is obviously super nice. It's going to give us constitution saving throw proficiency, which is super useful for holding concentration on spells. And it's especially useful later on with how this class is going to work in combat. We also get to pick a fighting style here, which is super useful. I would just go for defense for the playstyle we're going to go with here. The other ones don't really matter. We're going to be using a shield and a one-handed weapon, most likely. And the other ones aren't really, the only one you'd really go for otherwise is two-weapon fighting, which we're not going to be two-weapon fighting, or great weapon fighting. But again, we're not going to be using that. on this build, because it's just not going to be the best way for us to output damage. So defense is good. A +1 to your AC is pretty much useful in every situation, so that's the one. For ability scores, this is what we're going to pick. Most importantly, Charisma at 16, Constitution at 16, Dexterity at 14. You can kind of then throw 2 10s on either of the 3 remaining skills. I choose Intelligence and Wisdom, because Strength is not really something we're going to be using on this character. It's the kind of thing that doesn't really... It's easily avoided, and things that require Strength checks are things that can easily be done with another character like Karlach. You know, they're mostly out of game, out of dialogue situations where you can just switch to another companion and do it with them instead. So no reason to pick Strength. The only reason you might want to pick Strength as another 10 skill instead of probably Intelligence here is because it gives you carrying capacity. That's literally the only reason. I can't see any other reason why you'd want to. As far as skill proficiencies, another important thing here. I get Perception from my race in this one because I am a drow on this character, but if you don't get Perception from race, you're picking that. It's so much better. It's the best choice out of all of these, probably. So you go Perception if you don't have it already, and then either Insight or Intimidation, the other 2 that I've picked here. Intimidation is eventually going to be the one missing sort of Charisma dialogue skill. We're going to have Persuasion, we're going to have Deception later on. So Intimidation fills that gap a little bit, so we just have all of the dialogue options. Insight is similar. We're not going to reach the same maximum bonus with that because we're obviously already very good at Charisma, and Insight is not a Charisma skill. But having the proficiency with Insight is very useful, because Insight is something that also comes up a lot in all of the all dialogues. You know, it's a passive thing, so you might notice things that a character's doing that aids in the storytelling process, so that's kind of cool to have as well. So Perception first, and then either Intimidation or Insight. That's the picks there. Second level, we're going Fighter again, and this will actually be our last level in Fighter, but this is a level where we get Action Surge, which isn't too important yet. So what you could do is sort of delay this Fighter level until a little bit later in the leveling process, but if you're respecing anyway, it doesn't really matter. And like I said, if you are starting the game from scratch, going level by level, going through the story, I probably wouldn't recommend going Fighter 2 first. It's certainly doable, don't get me wrong, you can absolutely do that, but you might find that around level sort of level 3, well actually no, you'll probably end up being pretty weak from the beginning because we've dumped our strength. So what you'd probably have to do anyway is pick 2 levels in Fire but not dump your strength, go with a completely different set of ability scores, and then respec again when you get to like level 4 or 5. Probably level 5 you'd respec again if you really wanted to go Fire first, but like I said, you'd skip the 2 Fire levels and respec at level 8. That's what I would do. But anyway, let's carry on. So that's level 2, we get Fire. That's the last level of Fire we're going to get. We're next going to go over and pick Warlock, because they're going to be our next class that we're going to pick. So everybody knows why Warlocks are good. If you've never played D&D before and never played Baldur's Gate before, Warlocks basically get the best cantrip in the game, Eldritch Blast. You fire a beam of energy, it's force damage, which is the least, if I'm not mistaken, it's either force or psychic damage. It's the least resisted damage in D&D, and the same goes for in Baldur's Gate. So basically a cantrip that you can use against anything, and Warlocks even get the extra ability to power up their Eldritch Blast to be even better. The also good thing about Eldritch Blast is that the higher your character level, not just Warlock level, because that's a very important thing, the higher your character level, the more beams of Eldritch Blast you get to shoot per blast. So I think at level 5 it goes up to 2 beams, so you get to fire 2, which can be at 2 completely different targets if you like. And I believe at level maybe level 9, you might have to check the wiki for that one, but I think it's level 9 or 10 that you get another beam, a 3rd beam of Eldritch Blast, which is really cool. So 100% picking Eldritch Blast as one of our cantrips. That's absolutely a given. So the other cantrip, I would say you're not going to really need a melee thing, a melee range thing like Bone Chill. I would go for more of a utility thing. So Blade Ward's quite good, but meh. So I'd go something like Friends, Mage Hand, Minor Illusion's also good. This is one of those things where, depending on what cantrips you might get from, say, a Tiefling race, because I think the Mephistopheles Tiefling gets Mage Hand, I think. So this is one way you're going to pick something. I'm going to go Friends here because very useful in conversation situations. Again, this is going to be a build where your character can kind of go into a situation, be the face of the party. Subclass is another choice. I would say it's either Fiend or Archfey. Archfey seems to be one that a lot of people like to pick because you get the Fey Presence ability, which is really cool. Charm or frighten nearby foes with the Feywilds, beguiling at disturbing magics. It only lasts 2 turns. And when I picked Archfey, I actually thought the range on that is not very good. You kind of have to be pretty much in melee range anyway. Very, very close to people. 3 meters is not a lot. I prefer the Fiend. The spells that you get are okay. You know, Arms of Hatar is pretty good. Armor of Agathis is pretty good. But mainly it's the subclass feature of Dark One's Blessing we're looking for here. When you kill something, you get 4 temporary hit points. Great. Makes us a little bit more tanky. It's just 3 hit points. And we're probably going to be killing a lot of creatures with this build. So that's just nice to have. As far as spells you can pick, again, this is very much a pick your own. Except for one thing, pick Hex. This is going to be very important going down the line. It's our main concentration spell, and when I get to the end of the levels, we'll discuss what the combat situation is like for something like this. But that's basically what you're going to want to pick. Hellish Rebuke is really good. Reaction, first level spell slot, which is a Warlock spell slot, so you get that back on a short rest, and it deals quite a lot of damage. To be fair, 2d10 fire damage is nothing to shake a stick at. So Hellish Rebuke is a good option. Charm Person, Command are also both really good options as well. So they're something to look at, especially Command. Command is something that really can make enemies do quite a lot of really useful things, but to be fair, you're probably going to have other party members that have access to Command or other control spells, so I would just go for the ones that deal out a lot of damage, like Hellish Rebuke. Next level, Warlock 2. Again, spells aren't too important here. Go for some useful things. Command's good, like I said. We've already got Friends, so Charm Person is not exactly that useful because we don't really need 2 spells to do that. So I would go Command, or you could go for one of the ones that sort of gives you a little bit of coverage. Witch Bolt is useful. I might actually say go for Witch Bolt here, to be honest, because in situations where you can spot that there's a bunch of enemies standing in water, Witch Bolt's a nice thing to have, so yeah, I'd go for that. Eldritch Invocation. Now here is a really, really important choice. You're getting Agonizing Blast. Don't even question me. You get to add your Charisma modifier to your Eldritch Blast damage. It's just, this is the invocation that makes Warlocks so good. This is what makes Eldritch Blast the best cantrip in the game. Just pick it. Just don't even ask any more questions. As far as the second choice, you've kind of got a little bit of choice here. Personally, I like to go for Beguiling Influence, which is not really something that a lot of people go for. Another choice is Repelling Blast, which allows your Eldritch Blast to also push people away. I think the wording of this is a little bit funny because it says you can push the creature up to 4.5 meters away, as if you get a choice. The wording of that made me thought at first that this game gives you a choice of whether you want your Eldritch Blast to push somebody back. Like it comes up as like one of the little what's the word I'm looking for? Reaction dialogues where it says, hey, you know, you want to push them back a little bit. That's not how it works at all. It just does it, which is kind of annoying because sometimes you'll knock an enemy off a cliff that you don't necessarily want to knock off the cliff. Maybe they're a boss and they have some good items on them and you want to nick. So that's an option that certainly makes your Eldritch Blast more powerful. But I go for Beguiling Influence. I said beguiling a bit funny then. Beguiling Influence because you get proficiency in Deception and Persuasion, which, again, we're a charisma-based character. Having those proficiencies is just really, really useful. So go for that. Devil's Sight is also quite useful. You get basically a little bit of dark vision, but if you're picking particular races, you might already have that. So that's, you know, something to consider. Beast Speech is also useful. You can cast Speak with Animals at will without expending any spell slots, which is super cool. Really unlocks some interesting dialogue options with a lot of animals in the game. So that's just a nice to have. But I would go probably Beguiling Influence or Beast Speech if you don't want Repelling Blast, like I don't. Because too many times I've knocked an enemy off a cliff that had a sword that I wanted, and I've had to reload a save and do the whole fight again, which is just really annoying. So if we got any influence, beast speech, that's probably what you want to go for. Okay, Warlock 3. You get another spell here. I would pick either Misty Step or Mirror Image personally. You get Misty Step from one of the items I'm going to recommend later, but you do only get it at one use. But Mirror Image is also good. I'm going to pick Mirror Image here. And then Pact of the Blade. That's the pack boon we're picking. It lets you use, if you bind your packed weapon as the whatever weapon you want, it becomes a charisma weapon, no longer a strength or dexterity weapon. So it's what allows us to do melee damage, basically, because our charisma modifier is obviously much better than whatever else we were getting. And Warlock level 4 is the next one that we go for. This is going to be our last level in Warlock. We get one extra cantrip here. I would probably go Mage Hand, just because it's what you saw. No, I'm gonna let's go Blade. Either Mage Hand or Blade Ward. You can tell that I'm a little bit torn here, but that's the last one we're gonna pick there. And then spells, we learn another spell. I'm gonna learn Misty Step here because it's the one I didn't choose last time. And finally, this is our feat level. We're gonna not pick a feat, and we're gonna bump our charisma up with the ability improvement. We don't need to go any higher with charisma because we're gonna find items that will increase our charisma even more. But that's the last Warlock level we will be taking. So, this is a situation where it's a little bit gutting that we don't just get one extra level here somewhere. Because level 5 Warlocks get the Deepened Pack, and if you pack to the Blade, you get extra attack, which is obviously really useful to get an extra attack with your packed weapon. Helps pump out a lot more damage. But you'll see later on, because we're actually going to be switching to Sorcerer here, and this will allow us to get to a maximum of Sorcerer 6, which I'll explain why that's important later, getting to Sorcerer 6. So, a little bit rough that we don't get an extra attack there, but it's going to be worth it, trust me. So, Sorcerer is the next level we're going to pick. We get 4 cantrips here. This is where our spellcasting really starts to sort of take off a little bit. Blade Ward's a good one here. Firebolt's useful just for... oh, pardon me. Firebolt's useful because it's not necessarily useful for damage because we've got Eldritch Blast for that. But for lighting things on fire, it's just useful to have a cantrip that can do fire damage. Light is another useful one here. And then I would probably go for Ray of Frost. We already have Witch Bolt for lightning damage, so we don't need Shocking Grasp there. Bone Chill's quite good. I would pick either Bone Chill or Ray of Frost, to be honest. Ray of Frost helps slow people down, so you can, if you're chasing an enemy, you can choose to use Ray of Frost instead of your Eldritch Blast, for example. Bone Chill prevents healing, and Undead get disadvantage on attack rolls, so they're both quite useful situationally. They're not going to do as much damage as Eldritch Blast, but that's not really what you're going to be using these for anyway. You could also just get rid of Light and go for Bone Chill instead. That's probably what I'd do, actually, because Light is very situational, and you're probably going to have torches anyway, so who cares. And then for spells, so we really don't need any damaging ones here, to be honest. We're not going to be using them. Shield's really useful because you can just expend a spell slot to not get hit with how high our AC is going to be, so that's super useful to get. Chromatic Orb's nice because you can choose the damage type, but we've already kind of got enough damage coverage already. I would go for Thunder Wave. Not only is it damage coverage, but it's also so satisfying when you can use Thunder Wave and chuck a bunch of enemies off the cliff at once. It's just nice. It's just a nice feeling to do that. And we also get to pick our subclass. It's between Draconic Sorcery or Draconic Bloodline or Storm Sorcery, sorry. Now, the thing to keep in mind here, you might say, you know, the level 6 bonus you get from Draconic Bloodline is much better, right? And I would agree with that. You get to pick another damage resistance. As you can see here, these all say at level 6 you get a bonus with the spell and you become resistant. We're not resistant yet, and with the way this build is laid out, we'll only get this resistance at level 12, where we've already kind of done most of the game, and I don't really... personally, I think at that point these damage resistances are just not that useful. We do get some spells from some of these. We've kind of already got enough spells though, that's the thing. So, do we really need these? I would say no. I would pick Storm Sorcery because the feature you get with this is that if you cast a level 1 spell or higher, as your bonus action you can fly away without taking opportunity attacks. Which is just... it's the kind of thing that's very situational. You're not going to necessarily need it every combat, but when you need it, you're going to be so thankful you have it, right? So, and from here on out, we're basically just taking Sorcerer to the moon, all the way to the end. Spell, again, we get another spell choice here. Still only level 1 spells, but, I mean, you don't really need much at this point. You've kind of got everything you want. Featherfall, maybe Enhanced Leap. Like I said, you're really not looking for much here, if that makes sense. We get our first meta magic options here. These options are pretty limited. I think Twin Spell is definitely the best out of these 4, but you get to pick 2. So I'd pick Twin Spell and one of the others. I would say Distant Spell is probably the most at making our Eldritch Blast better. Sorcerer 3, this is where things really start to kick off. So again, we get another spell, some level 2 spells. I think I'd probably just get Detect Thoughts straight away, just because the role-playing and story elements you get with Detect Thoughts are just super useful. And then you're getting Quicken Spell. I'm not even going to bother explaining the other ones, because Quicken Spell is the one we want. For 3 sorcery points, we get to cast a spell as a bonus action that would normally be an action. If you haven't figured it out yet, we're going to get into why that's so insane, but yeah, we'll get to it. You've probably figured it out already, but you'll see. So that's all the levels I have in my build on this character, sorry. And which is lucky, because that's kind of where the build really kicks off. Next level would be Sorcerer 4. You get your second feat option here. So you've kind of got a lot of choices. You can either go for another ability score increase and get your charisma up to 20. This means that when we find our item later in the game in Act 3 that increases our charisma, we'll be at a 22 charisma, which is obviously really insane. But in my opinion, is there much difference between a 20 charisma and 22 charisma? Yeah, you get an extra +1 on some of your damage rolls and stuff like that. I haven't really decided yet if that's the way to go. I don't think so personally. I think some of the feat options are just too useful not to have them. Some obvious choices here. Warcaster gives us advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain spell concentration, but we already have proficiency in that anyway, so we'll kind of already be very good at concentration checks anyway. Other choice is Spell Sniper. This means that we roll crit damage on 19s as well as 20s with our spells, but we're going to get an item that does that pretty early in the game. I'll tell you about it at the end. We're going to get an item that does that for free, basically. We'll have just having the item. If you don't want to get this item, or if for a sort of reason you can't get it, which we'll get into, pick Spell Sniper. It's really, really good. Other choices are Lucky, which is always a great choice because you get 3 luck points, which are basically free rerolls. So, I mean, you can imagine how amazing that is. And Alert is another good one. You get a +5 on initiative, which is massive in this game. I don't remember the exact thing, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that this game doesn't use a d20 for initiative rolls. It uses a different, smaller die, which, if that's the case, +5 is a massive difference. It's really going to make sure that you are going first in basically every combat. So, okay, I'm going to use this test dummy as a little bit of a example here of what a round might look like with this build. So, I'm not going to be able to do all of it because Action Surge is not available unless you're in combat, which I'm not. So, first turn in combat, you're going to Hex with your bonus action to get the extra 1d6 necrotic damage with every hit. And then Eldritch Blast with your action, right? So that's going to be what you do. Second turn, that's when things really kick into high gear, right? So, you get your 1d6 damage extra on each hit. Keep that in mind, because that's just extra damage we're going to get on top. So, action, double Eldritch Blast, bang bang, that's 2 procs of Hex. So we're getting 1d10 plus our Charisma modifier, plus Hex damage. Then you Action Surge, and you do it again, bang bang, 2 more Eldritch Blasts. Then, Quicken Spell Meta Magic, Eldritch Blast, 2 more Eldritch Blasts. 2 more Eldritch Blast, 2 more procs of Hex damage. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of damage.
No, that's a lot of damage!
The thing that's really amazing about this is that that's not even its final form, because at higher character levels, at character level 10, you your Eldritch Blast turns into a 3-blast Eldritch Blast. So rather than 6 beams of Eldritch Blast on a turn, you're now getting 9. And all 9 of them proc hex damage. I mean, come on. So, let's talk items, because there's some items that really power up this build a lot. First of all, armor. Just go for whatever the best heavy armor is that you can find. Basically, you want to bump up the AC as high as possible. Similar goes for the shield. An easy way to boost your AC. Any shield that gives you +2, great. There are a few in the game that give you a +3 to your AC. They're quite few and far between. For a weapon, there's a very specific weapon that you should aim for in this build. It's called the Knife of the Undermountain King. You get it from the armorer in the Githyanki Kresh that you get in the game. Kresh Ilek, I think is how you pronounce it. And it basically gives you the Spell Sniper feat, which is pretty nuts. I haven't been able to... It's hard to test if it actually works, but everybody online seems to say, even though it's obviously a melee weapon, that part of the weapon's tooltip doesn't specify melee weapon attacks. It just says attacks made to score a crit on a 19 as well as a 20. And other people online have done tests, I assume, and say that it works as the Spell Sniper feat, which is pretty mad. So pick up that, and then you don't need the Spell Sniper feat. If you don't get this weapon, I would get the Spell Sniper feat at Sorcerer 4 rather than Warcaster, because like I said, Warcaster basically just makes us better at Constitution saving throws, but we're already pretty fucking good at Constitution saving throws, so we don't really need it. Whereas Spell Sniper, reducing your crit chance from just a 20 to a 19 and a 20, that actually statistically increases our chance of getting a crit by a lot. So get that weapon, and if not, like if you can't get to the Kresh or something because of story choices you've made, get the Spell Sniper feat at Sorcerer 4. For the head slot, the Marksmanship hat is pretty good, but when you get to Baldur's Gate in Act 3, you should go to the store that sells the Birthright Helm. This gives you a +2 to your Charisma, which is going to bump us up to 20 Charisma, which is obviously massive, and it's going to get you to 22 if you're already at 20 Charisma. Necklace wise, the Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet is probably the best. It gives you a ability where if you critical hit an enemy, you can choose to also paralyze them, which is obviously really, really good, because if you didn't know, when you paralyze somebody, same as if they go prone, you always have advantage on a hit. So if you do that and you have, I don't know, Karlach on your team, or Lae'zel, or God forbid you have both of them, and you can just hit somebody that's paralyzed with like 4 attacks, that's a lot of damage. And that's it, that's my build. It's the ultimate blaster caster. It does melee, it does party face activities. You can do block picking with this because you have a high dex and you have sleight of hand proficiency. There's really not a lot that this build can't do, to be honest. It's probably not as, you know, a lot of people like to use the term min-max with D&D, where you sort of hyper-focus on one thing and you get really good at it, right? That's a way to go, but this build is more of a... It's still really competent in combat, but it's also so good at a load of different stuff, which for this game, I just feel like it's the right way of playing it, because the game, for better or for worse, kind of forces you into these situations where your main character has to be the one that does stuff. For example, in my playthrough, where I play this exact build, I'll have a party of myself, Shadowheart, Karlach, and Lae'zel. I've respec'd Lae'zel so she has 1 level in Barbarian so that she can rage. I've respec'd Shadowheart into a life domain cleric so she can do better healing, and then stacked her for healing, heavy armor, high AC, all that. And Karlach's still a full Barbarian. A lot of people will look at me and be like, Astarion, you don't have Astarion on your team, what are you doing? And what I found was that I kind of didn't need Astarion. The only thing he was on my party for a long time was the sleight of hand proficiency, because despite having really good charisma, he never was the person speaking to people. It was always my main character, because he's the main character, which it's kind of a flaw in the way the game works. I do reckon what they should do is give you some options in the chat, dialogue options, where you can kind of get one of your party members to say something instead of you. You know, it makes no sense for you to try an intimidation check when Karlach is standing right fucking there. Why would you do that, right? If they did that, I would probably shy away from these more charisma face heavy roles because you don't need to. But at this point in the game, the way the game works, you kind of need to, which is an unfortunate thing. Same goes for sleight of hand to a lesser extent. What was basically happening was, you know, Astarion would be the person to lockpick things and open locked chests and disarm traps, and then he would open them, and because he was the character that I was controlling at the time, he would loot it and fill his inventory, but he isn't very high strength, so he can't carry a lot. So then I was having to open my inventory sharing screen and move things around, and it was just kind of annoying. And I was left feeling like, damn it, I wish my character was good at sleight of hand, so I didn't have to do all this extra inventory management. So there you are. That's why I made sure this build is good at sleight of hand as well. Like I said, you can build characters in this game, just like in D&D 5th edition, that are much better than this at one thing. An example being, if you forego 2 levels in Warlock, and you instead just go Fighter 2, Warlock 2, and then go Sorcerer 8, you get more sorcery points, you get more spell slots, you get more... It's just better at being a blaster, but you don't get the melee bonus, so you're not doing anything in melee. Also, if you just don't get the levels in Fighter, you will be better at being the spellcaster. You can take just 2 levels in Warlock to get Eldritch Blast and your Invocation options, and then go to Sorcerer 10, and you get even more spell slots and be better at casting spells and more meta magic options, all this stuff. So, but then you can't do your heavy armor, you can't do your action surge, you don't get defense for the +1 to AC, you don't get the Constitution saving throw proficiency, which is probably the most important part, to be honest. You're not quite as versatile, which is what I think this build really screams. It's the most versatile build that you can build. It's the best for your main character, in my opinion. If you like the video, please leave a like on the video, and comment down below if you like these Baldur's Gate videos, or if there's any other sort of party roles that you want me to do a build for, because I'm really excited for that. There is actually a video coming out soon. I think if you like this one, you're really, really going to like. So please subscribe to the channel to see that. I'm also going to be starting a very specific, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough that I'll be doing live and uploading videos of, that has a very specific goal in mind. You know, it's a very focused, you'll see. I'm very excited to put the video out. You'll be seeing it not long after this one, I hope, so stick around. Other than that, enjoy your day and keep wasting all of your time in Baldur's Gate. Peace out, everybody.